Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of Sunday Night Live with me, Jonny Lipsham, here at jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk, having camera problems. Bear with me just a second. It's like way brighter than it should be. There we go, fixed. Anyway, that's that sorted. I don't know why that was the case, but anyway, for some reason the contrast was up really high on the camera settings, but I have now fixed that, so we're good to go. I hope everybody is doing well. So it is 11 p.m. here in the UK because you guys have gone forward. Your clocks went forward this weekend in the United States. So in order to make sure that this show is always at 6 p.m. Central Time, I moved my show twice a year. So 2 times a year when clocks go forward and clocks go back, I moved my show to 11 p.m. instead of midnight in the UK, which is when it usually is. And that's just to make sure that always, every week, this show is always 6 p.m. Central Time, whether clocks go forward or whether clocks go back. It's always 6 p.m. So that's just one among many of the special things I do for my United States audience. So, yeah. It's just, just to make life easier for you guys. So I hope you find that helpful. I know that for folks in the UK and in Europe, it maybe isn't quite so helpful because you might miss out on a show. So I apologize if that's the case for you and you're having to watch this on replay because you came in expecting the show to be at midnight or at 1 a.m. if you're in Europe, and it's not. It's an hour earlier. So it will be that way for a couple of weeks until we get to the end of the month. And then if you are in the UK or Europe, our clocks will go forward. And so everything will be restored to normality and the show will be back at midnight until we get to November-ish, October, November, which is when wintertime starts here in the UK. And of course it starts in the United States as well. But you guys always have a couple of weeks ahead of us. So whether your clocks go forward or go back, you're always, think about 2 weeks ahead of us. So that's why there is this change every time. So twice a year we do this. And actually for me personally, it's easier because it means, my show finishes earlier and I'm not going to bed at like 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning. So for me, it's a useful feature. It's a useful thing. So I hope that they don't scrap daylight savings time either here in the UK or in the United States. I think it has a lot of benefits for a lot of people. Now, I know that that's a political thing and we don't do politics here, but broadly speaking, I think it's a good idea. So, and I'm just trying to stop for some reason, my chair is sliding back. I don't know why. Anyway. So, Billy Morgan, as usual, is first in the door. We've only got 6 people here. But that might be because of the time change, and people are expecting it to be later than it is. So, sorry about that, folks. And we got Dave Barcelo here as well. We got Chris from Rackner, who says, "Good evening, gentlemen. Just getting over some health setbacks, but things seem to be a little brighter. Looking forward. Great to see all of you again." Chris, it is great to have you amongst us. As I said in my reply to you, I hope you continue to recover well and get back to full strength and all of that, so that you are able to get back to making music and get back to bringing your sense of fun and sense of humor to this group, because we certainly enjoy having you here and we certainly enjoy your humor as well. And the contributions that you bring to this group are awesome. So, yeah, it would be a shame to lose you. So, we're glad you're still here, and we're glad that you have you've popped back into the show tonight. So that's great. Glad to have you here again. Stephen Wilson is here. Hopefully, he has not further injured himself again. Yeah, Stephen, I hope you're doing well as well, mate. And Bobby Bale is here. Just Bob is here. Russell Harris is here. Don Oliver is here. Dave from Aurora's Boring Alice is also here. And we've got Paul Morgan as well. And that rounds off everybody so far. So, if you know folks who would ordinarily be here and they have maybe forgotten about the clocks changing and all of that, please go grab them now and get them in here. That would be cool. So please do, reach out and message them and let them know that we are live and the show is ongoing now. That would be cool. Other than that, this is a Studio One show. And I am here to answer your Studio One questions and to talk about things that you need help with or assistance with, or if there are features and functionalities in Studio One that you would like to learn more about. That's what this show is for. So if you have questions, please do get them into the chat and do what Just Bob has just done. He starts his post with @Jonny Lipsham Studios. That's the best way to ask me a question because it shows up my name in red and then I can separate questions out from everything else that's going on in the chat. So please do that. And yes, I said do. I like saying do. It's a fun word. So yeah, please do that. I would appreciate it a lot because it helps me pick out questions much more easily than if you just do a question mark or something like that. So please do start with @Jonny Lipsham Studios. I'm aware that robs you of characters for asking your question. So if you need to carry over into a second post, you can do that. I have no issues with you doing that whatsoever. However, if you're watching and you can't get into the chat because it says subscribers only, then please do hit the subscribe button and get yourself subscribed to the channel, and then you will be able to ask away your questions, and you'll also be able to say hello. So if you're watching and you would like to say hello or you'd like to ask a question, then please make sure you have subscribed, and whilst you're hitting that subscription button, please also hit the thumbs up whilst you're at it. That would also help. And also, when you select notifications, when you hit that notification bell, make sure to select all notifications. That way you will get a notification of all things that happen on this channel. So not just live shows, but also standalone videos that I put out there, like my Studio One overview videos that I do when there is a new version of Studio One. So when a new version of Studio One comes out, I always have a video for you guys so that you can get to know some of the features that are new and you can see how they work and stuff like that, so that, you get the heads up on how it works before you download and install it. So I like to put those out pretty much on the day of release of the updates. So those go out regularly. And especially with the new release cadence that PreSonus has unveiled last year, just kind of prior to the Studio One Pro 7 launch in October of last year, they announced that basically the release cadence was going to be sped up, and you would have feature drops 3 or 4 times per year. So that's a much faster release cadence than has ever been done by PreSonus. So that means more videos. That means more stuff that I will post up here. And of course, when we do the overview videos, I will also do a follow-up live stream as well on the nearest available Wednesday or Sunday, depending upon when the release is. And, I can deep dive into more things and we can look more deeply into certain features, or if you've got questions about things that have been added to a version of Studio One. So those are the kind of things that we do here. And let's see, Harley Bobby is here, Mixed Master is here as well. Hello and welcome. We got 12 people here. This is good. So let's get to what Just Bob is talking about here. He says, good news. My computer is finally set up and working 100% perfect. Found a ton of duplicate files that ate up all of my 1 terabyte hard drive. Good grief. Something happened when I transferred the files over. It is entirely possible, Bob, that you may have actually not only transferred the files, but also set it up so that it makes copies, it makes duplicates or backups of every file. and that would certainly present a problem for you, which I'm glad you have uncovered. So that's good news. And I'm glad everything is working 100% for you. This is good stuff. All right, so if anyone else has any other questions, then we can get discussing. So get those things in the chat just now. Otherwise, this is going to be a very short show, because this show depends upon your questions. Because I don't normally prepare a lot in advance for these shows, sometimes because I don't have the time to. Particularly on Sundays, I don't have necessarily the time to. On Wednesdays, I do tend to have a talking point that we can discuss. But for Studio One, for Sunday Night Live, my Sundays are incredibly busy. So I don't really get a chance to do a whole lot of prep in advance for a particular feature or a talking point to talk about. So your questions would be much appreciated here. Just Bob says 100% something I did. Yeah, it's easily done actually when you are moving to a new computer. In actual fact, there in the Presonus knowledge base, there is actually a really, really good article, and I'll tell you how good that article is. I wrote it. That covers moving to a new computer and how to get your songs moved over to a new computer. So I wrote that article. So definitely go and give that a very good read whenever you are about to move to a new computer or you're considering it. And it will help you eliminate, potentially duplicating things by accident. Because that can actually quite easily happen. And you definitely don't want to do that because, especially if it's song files or it's sound sets, depending upon the sound set, there are some sound sets that are quite big, like they can be a couple of gigabytes or more. Some of them can be like 3 or 4 gigabytes. That's a lot of space, especially when you're dealing with, 1,000 gigabytes or a terabyte. And you think, 3 or 4 gigs, not a big deal. It all adds up. The more of those files that are 3 or 4 gigabytes in size, the more that adds up. So if you've got, say, 20 or 30 soundset files that are 4 gigabytes, do the maths. That tells you how much that's going to eat up your hard drive. Have I ever tried any of Presonus control surfaces? I have both the Faderport 16 and Adam SQ. They rock. That is a very good question. I have a fader I have the single fader port, which is actually very, very good. I did have a Faderport 16 when we were testing those before release. I had one of those. And I was hoping to hang on to it, but they requisitioned it because they needed to sell it, basically. So they asked for it back. And that's fine. I'm okay because I have a Studio Live Series 3 mixer sat right in front of me right now that I use in DAW mode, and that pretty much does everything I want to do. Although DAW mode on the Studio Live mixers compared to the fat channel, the fader ports, there's definitely a difference in functionality. You get a lot more functionality out of the fader ports than you do the Studio Live mixers in DAW mode. And that's not because the mixers in DAW mode is bad or the functionality is bad. It's not. It's actually very, very good. Particularly for using the encoders for controlling plugins. That's very, very cool, actually. Because they just control everything. Especially Studio One native plugins. If you're wanting to use the fat channel section of the Studio Live mixer to control third-party plugins, you got to do a little bit of mapping. But once you've mapped out like your favorite, most used plugins, it's pretty much set it and forget it. Once it's done, they're mapped and it's done. And then you can very easily just control parameters whenever you open that plugin. You can just control them. It's very, very straightforward. The setup part is maybe the bit that's a bit of a pain in the arse, but otherwise, once it's done, it's incredibly useful. Incredibly useful. I use the fat channel section all the time because, especially on the 32SC, the 32SC doesn't have the scribble strips like the old, the first generation Studio Live Series 3 mixers had. You know, the 16 and the 32 and the 64. Those ones had a scribble strip, and the fat channel section there was dynamic. So whatever plugin was instantiated, the encoders would behave accordingly. Now, without that, they are fixed. So this means that they control gain, they control panning, gate compressor, and then the last 4 encoders are for EQ. I'm looking at it right now just to make sure. So you have a high-pass filter, gain and frequency and Q controls for the different elements of an EQ. And then for the compressor, it's basically just a 1 encoder. So whatever you've selected, be that the attack or the release. So if you've selected the attack, you can use that encoder to adjust the attack. And then you just click on the release button on the plugin, and then you use that encoder to adjust that. So you do have to use the mouse just a little bit, but I don't mind. I mean, you know, I learned on an SSL console when I was in my teen years. In my early teens, I started mixing, and I learned on an SSL 4000. I think it was an E console. I don't think it was the G, but it might have been. I can't really remember. I'm fairly confident that it was the E console that I learned on. So, you know, kind of mixing with faders and using encoders and stuff like that is pretty much second nature to me. I did that for a lot of years. And then when I moved away from London back home to Scotland, I didn't have a mixer anymore. So I had to do everything with the mouse. And I just got used to that workflow, doing everything with the mouse. And then I got a fader port, and that kind of made things a bit easier. Just the single fader port, and then I got the fader port 16 when we were testing and developing that, and then that went, and now I have I'm on my second Studio Live mixer. I've got another one which I use for playing live with my band, which of course I don't do anymore, so it's in a box in the garage. But it still works. Still a really, really good mixer, and that was one of the first gen Series 3 mixers. But yes, I've now got this awesome 32SC, and I love it. It's really, really good. And I love using DAW mode for mixing. Let's see. And I also have an Atom SQ. I do. It's over there on my Mac, actually. It's connected to my Mac. You can see my Mac keyboard just here. But yeah, it's connected to my Mac, and it works pretty darn well. It does a great job, and I use that as a little keyboard. I've got this keyboard here, but I don't have a keyboard for the Mac, so I use the Atom SQ for that, and it's fantastic. Again, using the knobs and encoders for doing a little bit of mixing as well. Handy stuff. Let's see. Just Bob says, is there a way to separate burned-in effects like Ampere to a recorded stem? Say you want to keep the recording, but didn't like the amp sim you used. If you have rendered that, to audio via the transform to rendered audio feature, you can undo that. You can revert it. You can revert it back, and then the Ampere will reappear in the inserts of the channel. However, here's the caveat. If you have then exported those stems and you are using those rendered stems in another session for mixing, because you do your production in one session and then you do your mixing in another session, there's a lot of people that do that, by the way. Once it's in, it's in. There's no getting away from it unless you go back to that other session and remove the plugin, replace it with something else, and then re-render it, and then import that into your mixing session. So there is a long and convoluted way to fix that, but generally speaking, make sure you are happy with the sound before you commit to the sound. is the best advice I can give you. Because generally speaking, once things are printed, there's no real way back. Studio One does provide the transform to rendered audio, and you can reverse that flow. But if you transform to rendered audio and then you bounce it afterwards, you might not be able to go back. Especially if you then save and close the session, then all the event history is gone. So be careful with that and think carefully about the sound of the guitar track before you print it. And make sure you are 100% happy with it. If you are not 100% happy with it, even if there's like a little 1 to 5% doubt about that sound, don't print it. Don't commit to it until you are 100% absolutely certain that's what you want to do. Mixmaster also has the Studio Live AR16C. Well, that's cool. Yeah, no motorized faders on that device, however. Unlike the Series 3 mixers, which does have the motorized faders. But yes, the AR16C is very, very good. A friend of mine has that for his band that he uses for in-ears, and it works really well for him. Holly Bob says he uses his fader port all the time and he loves it. Yes, I love mine as well. And I do use mine all the time because the only drawback of my mixer is at the moment the transport controls don't work. And I'm pretty sure that it's a problem with this particular unit. I don't think it's a problem overall, but with all the mixers. But this particular unit, the transport buttons don't work. It could be that I need to I don't know, reinstall the firmware or something. That might get them working, but I just haven't got round to it. So I use the transport controls on the fader port instead. And it's fine. I have it. It's there. It's sat right next to my left hand. It's fine. I'm not really bothered about it until the fader port stops working. Then that would be a problem. Then I would have to use the mouse to do everything transport-wise, which it would be a change in workflow. And you know what? I'm not stuck. I'm not set in my ways. My workflow is not something that is rigid and fixed. It's a flexible thing because circumstances change. Circumstances change. There are, there could be any bunch of reasons as to why your preferred workflow won't work anymore. And if that's the case, if you are fixed in your workflow, you're stuck. You can't work. So you have to be flexible enough to adjust. I know there are some people where their workflow is like it's etched in stone, like the 10 Commandments on the stone tablets that Moses came down the mountain with. They are rock solid, and their workflow will not change for love, nor money, nor nobody. I know people like that. And personally, I don't think that's a healthy approach, and I don't think that's a good approach to being creative, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. That's just what I think. Other people's opinions will vary, and that's fine. And that's something that could be discussed, actually. Let's see. Dave says, just recently my template changed after update. Basically, I do not hear monitoring from recording live tracks. Printed tracks still play. I'm curious if anywhere is aware of the update does not save third-party ADDA. Well, it does. Studio One does do that. Studio One does save your audio I/O setup. But if you are using a third-party interface, which is what you're talking about you're using, you need to make sure that that is set as your default audio I/O setup. And the way to do that is set it all up how you like it with your inputs and your outputs. And any of your customized, personalized routing that you do, set that all up. And then there's a button there that says make default. Click that button, click apply, click OK, and that will be saved into the Studio One settings file. which then goes into your Studio One settings folder. And that means every time you start Studio One, it starts with those. And the cool thing about that is that once you've got that set up, let's say you open a song that was sent to you by somebody else and it has their I.O. in the song. And of course, your I.O. is completely different. Therefore, you don't hear any sound. You don't hear anything. Nothing plays. You go to the audio I.O. setup, and there's a button there that says revert to default. You click that button, your own default I.O. is restored, and you should hear everything as you'd expect to. So Studio One does save your audio I.O. setup. All right, so will the Atom SQ save mapping of third-party plugins? I don't know, because I don't actually use it for that. I don't use the Atom SQ for mapping plugins, so I don't know. Was using MyTie last night, can play on Akai MPK 249 keyboard and tweak parameters on Atom SQ and play on it too, but Akai doesn't save settings in hardware. That's probably an Akai issue. More than anything else, I suspect. Because I don't know, again, because I don't have the MPK 249, unfortunately. The Akai MPK 249 was $600. Okay, yeah, that's a decent price for that. Excuse me. Just Bob says, thanks, just thought that it might be possible to have all that embedded on rendered audio so another Studio One user could reopen and transform rendered audio and change if it clashes. I don't know. Actually, to be truthful, again, I don't know, because I've not actually done that. That's a scenario that I have never actually done. So that is something interesting that I would probably have to test and see if I can reproduce that. If I could just open a session that somebody sends to me, which I might actually be able to do this week, because I am expecting a session from somebody who is a Studio One Pro 7 user. And I will see if I will actually ask them, hey, could you transform to rendered audio all of your guitar tracks, please? And then send me the session. And then I'll open it up and I'll see if I can retransform them back and see if it opens up Ampire with their settings. That would be interesting. I've not actually ever done that. So that would be interesting to investigate. I mean, I've been using for Studio One for like 13 years, and that's definitely a scenario I have never done. So well done, Bob. You found the one scenario that I've never worked with. And with the Atom 18 months of Pro 7, you should only get 6 months. But if you have a number of different PreSonus audio devices that also give you 6 months, then you are able to stack those. That's definitely true. Dave Barstow is leaving us. Take care, Dave. Good to see you. Thanks for dropping by. Appreciate it. MyTie loads with non-MIDI ports. Yeah, that will be your song. That will be your external devices setup. More than likely. So make sure that your external devices setup is set correctly. Because MyTie should load. When you say loads non-MIDI ports, what does that mean exactly? It doesn't detect your MIDI device? Because it should. If you're able to record and use your Akai device without any issues recording it, then when you open up MyTie, it should say in the top, you should have like a little drop-down list of devices. Let me see. Let me just grab a new song, and I can show you kind of what I mean. So let's go and open MyTie. And let's go over to the screen here. There we go. Camera's turned on now. Awesome. All right, so here is MyTie. with the default sound. So at the top here, you see this, there's a little arrow here. And you'll see that there is the QS300, that's this keyboard. All right, so that's this keyboard. I also have UCNet Remote, and I also have QWERTY Keyboard. And I also have the fader port 2018, which is the single fader black fader port. So I can control any of these parameters here from the fader port if I want to. Don't necessarily want to. Now, if I click this little guy here, this opens up the control link boxes here. So I could click on this here, and then I could change this to like fader port, and then I could connect this to any of these particular controls here if I wanted to. Or I could connect it to something else. I could connect this. When it says UCNet Remote, what that means is that means my Studio Live mixer. So I could use an encoder on here on my Studio Live mixer to control one of these parameters. But like I said, I could set this to the fader port, and then I can connect one of these things here. Although that's a rotary encoder, so I don't really need a button particularly, because that's not going to change anything. So I can unassign that. What's a browser record? Where are the rest of the controls? Well, that's the volume. That's changing the volume. Okay, so I don't want to do that. I want to... No, it's still doing the volume. Hang on. No, it's still doing the volume. No, it's still changing the volume. Cut off. No, still changing the volume. I don't know why it's not changing. I don't want to assign it to F1. I want to assign it to my rotary encoder. Why won't it let me do that? Yeah, I don't know why it's not letting me do that. But basically, this is how you can set things up to control different parameters. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why that's not doing it. That's just changing the volume. That's just changing the main output volume. That's all that's doing. Which is not what I want. I don't know why that's happening. Anyway. So yeah. That's how you set that up. So any connected device to your keyboard that is connected in Studio One external devices, so Studio One options or preferences on a Mac, and external devices, there's all my external devices. So there's the fader port, there's the QS300. So you would need to see your Akai here as a control surface. So something like your MPK 249, you need to set that up as a keyboard and as a control surface. So you need to set it as a keyboard like this. That's what a keyboard is. And then if I was to go add here, add new control surface, and then Akai, and then I don't know which one it might be, but you'd select one of these, and this is the icon that you would get with the faders, the knobs, and the encoder. Okay, so whichever one of these devices, and if it's not one of these preset devices that you've got, fine. You can just create a new device, and and you just put in Akai MPK249 here, and then you set the receive from and send to, and then you should be good to go. And then you'll see it here. And then you just got to make sure that the send to and receive from are both set correctly. Once those are set correctly, then up here, you will see your Akai MPK249 listed in this little drop-down list. So I hope that that helps. Let's go back over here. And let's just catch up with some questions here. I need to select MPK249 or Atom SQ or all. Yes, you can. If you select all, then what happens is basically any connected device can potentially control that device. Two places shows something selected on right, but nothing plays. Where in that case, you probably not got your send and receive from set correctly. If you've not got those set correctly, then it won't work. By default, that is none. Yeah, that's probably because you don't have it set correctly. Just Bob says, cool, looking forward to the answer. If not, possible great feature request. Help build Studio One community and reason for ease of use of Studio One. I'm not necessarily sure it's necessarily a feature request. I think it's something that would need to be tested to see whether it does actually do that when you import a session from somebody else. So if somebody does the transform to rendered audio and sends, when they export the stems to you, they are exporting the channels. Here's the thing. If they send, this is the thing I've just thought of. If when they export the stems, they are exporting the channels, not just the tracks, they are exporting the channels, then it prints the inserts. It just prints them. Whether you want it to or not, it prints the inserts. So if you've got Ampere on there, it prints those. And then when you receive those, there's no way to transform that to untransform it, so to speak, because it hasn't actually been transformed. It's just been printed. See, the export stems works this way. What happens is it effectively solos each channel one at a time and does an offline bounce of that channel. One at a time. It's as if you went through and you press solo and then you did an export mixdown on just that one channel. Basically, that's what's going on in the background when you do the export stems. It does that one at a time. So when you do export stems of the channels, it prints everything that is on those channels. So all all inserts and all sends. It does them one at a time until they're all done. And then when they're all done, then you've got your exported channels and you can send them to somebody else. But everything that is on those is printed. They are baked. They cannot be undone. So that's just having just kind of thought through how they might be sending those stems to you. That's kind of what I'm thinking they probably have done, in which case there's no way to undo the Ampere. No way to undo it at all. It's impossible, unfortunately, because that's how the export stems works. If, however, they've done export tracks in the export stems dialog, then it doesn't go through the mixer channel at all. It just prints the main output of each track. That's all it does. So it bypasses all the inserts and sends. So if you want to send somebody completely raw tracks, that's what you do. And therefore, your guitar will not have any Ampere on it at all. It just completely skips over it. So that's something to bear in mind. Good question, though. Very, very, very good question. And I rather suspect that's how they are doing it. Oh. Yeah, that's kind of how I rather suspect that they are doing it. Um, so you I don't know. I don't know that there is another way in which to not do that. Unfortunately, not one that I can think of. But yeah, that one did take a little bit more thinking through. But now that I've thought it through and thought about the entire export process, I'm thinking it's not really actually possible. Unfortunately, sorry about that, but I don't think it's actually possible. But it was a fantastic question, and I could see why you would think that it might be possible, but I don't think it is. And actually, because of the process that is used in exporting, I don't think it's ever going to be possible. Not without completely reworking how exporting stems actually works. So I can't see a way in which it would ever be made possible, to be honest. So we got 16 people here, which is very low for a Sunday Night Live. We'd normally be up like, late 20s. Yeah. But I suspect it's because the show is like effectively for me an hour earlier. So we've probably lost some people because they're thinking it's going to start at midnight, which would be 7 p.m. US. But I never change the time for the US audience. It's always 6 p.m. So bear that in mind. In the springtime, as we go into summertime, in the United States, my show never changes for you guys. It's always 6 p.m. Even when your clocks have gone forward an hour, it's always 6 p.m. When your clocks go back an hour, it's always 6 p.m. So it's 6 p.m. Every week, 52 weeks of the year, unless I'm on vacation. So bear that in mind. Anybody got anything else that they want to ask? I'm not seeing anything. Because we've been going for 45 minutes, and it would be cool if we could make it to the hour. But if not, we don't. It's fine. If there are no more questions, then that's how we end the show. Just Bob says, got it thought both ways, baked the tracks. Yeah. The more I'm thinking about it, the more I think that's the case. The more I think about it, the more I think that that's the case. So, I mean, you could put it through as a feature request, but to be honest, I really wouldn't hold out a whole lot of hope that it would ever actually happen, because it would require a complete overhaul of how exporting stems works. So, yeah. The best way, really, to be honest, is for somebody to actually send you the song folder. Because if they send you the song folder zipped up, then when you open that song folder and you launch the song, you get the song exactly as it is for them. And therefore, if they've still got Ampire inserted, you have Ampire. So it should open up exactly as you would want, and then you can decide how you want Ampire to be. Maybe you choose a different preset or something else. Add Ampire to track, render track, and insert to audio. Preserve, insert, track, drag rendered file to desktop. Anywhere, open new song, drag file in to see if you can revert. Maybe. Yeah. That little procedure might work, Billy, but that doesn't necessarily mean that exporting stems will work in the same way. Because it doesn't. It doesn't work the same way. But yeah, that would be certainly one way in which to test the principle, for sure. But yeah, if you if you receive the whole song folder, and you have to get the whole folder, because if you don't, you're not going to get any of the media. You're not going to get any of the actual audio files themselves. And so when you open up the song, it will just say missing files. You don't want that. So make sure the person you're working with sends you the whole song. If they're not a member of Studio One Pro Plus, or you don't have a workspace, then, you know, if you have a workspace, then it's doing this is by far the easiest, because in a workspace you can actually literally share the song on your two computers, and then you can send and receive files as you need them. And therefore, it gives you a lot more flexibility to be able to go, hey, maybe I don't like this particular Ampere setting. Let's try it with this one. And then you can ping it back. You can update the song. They can download the latest version of the song. It will overwrite, and it'll be the updated version of the song. And then they can listen back and they can go, yeah, actually, I agree with you. That other preset works better than the one that we've been using. So using it in a workspace scenario works the best. The second best method is get this person to send you the actual song folder, zipped up or compressed, whether you're on a Mac or a PC. And then when they do that, then when you open the song, it will open in exactly the same way. So that would be, those are the top two ways to make sure that you've got flexibility with Ampere, is either getting the whole song folder or using a workspace in Studio One Pro Plus. And probably the workspace is the most flexible way. It gives you a lot of options. But it's a great question. And really, those are the only two solutions I can think of that would actually work. And work the best without clunky little workarounds or anything like that. But yeah, it's a great question. Zip folder does exactly what I was asking about. Instead of embedded info, I get sent the song. Yes, exactly. If they go to File, Convert to Zip folder or Zip file, that zips up the whole song folder, and then you can save that, and then you can send that, or they can do that, and then you can receive that. And then you are golden, and you can open up their song on your system. It will have their I/O, but like I explained earlier, you can change that. If you have a default I/O setup that you've saved as default, then you can just hit the revert to default button, and your own I/O will supersede what has been written to that particular song. So you'll be good to go. How do you set up a workspace? You need to be a member of Studio One Pro Plus, either monthly or annually. Once you are a member, you can go into your my.presonus.com account, and once you're in there, there is a menu bar at the top, and then you click on Workspaces. And if you've never created a workspace before, there'll be a little plus icon, and you can create a workspace there. If you're wanting a little bit more information, I have a little playlist on this channel for Presonisphere, as it used to be called. It's now called Studio One Pro Plus. And there's a couple of videos there that you can watch. There's only two. One shows you workspaces as it was when it was first unveiled, and pretty much it hasn't changed a whole lot. It's been improved a bit, but the fundamentals of how you create a workspace are still the same, even if it doesn't look the same. So if you are a member of Studio One Pro Plus, that is how you create workspaces. You go to Workspaces, and there's a button there to create workspaces. You just give it a nice little title, and then you can invite collaborators. And then once you've invited some collaborators, they can join your workspace. And then if you've got a song in there, in your workspace, they can join and share that song from inside Studio One. Joe Gilder did a really good video on how it works, and I think he did it with either John Hillman, or he did it with Gregor. I can't quite remember which other person got involved in making that video for Joe. And it's well worth checking out, because it's a really, really good video, and it shows the kind of the more current workflow. I've not updated mine because I didn't really see that much of a reason to. But yeah, workspaces are an incredible, very, very powerful feature for Studio One Pro Plus. For sure, it's one of the USPs, I think. Any chance you have anything to play with in a workspace? I don't, unfortunately. My workspaces are all for testing stuff internally with Presonus, because I work for Presonus. So all of my workspaces are for that. Or there's the workspaces for the Halloween and Christmas songwriting challenges that we've done for Songwriting Simplified. And there are workspaces there for those. But that's it. Those are the only workspaces that I have. I don't have anything that anyone can really kind of get in and play with. Sorry about that. I have to keep my workspaces private because, you know, we're testing things in there that are not for public consumption. So, sorry about that. All right, we are nearly at the end of the show. We've got like 6 or 7 minutes left. So if you have another question, I will take 1 or 2 more, and then we will call it an end of the show. Actually, I don't even know if there are any Studio One meetups going on tonight. I don't think there are. I would have thought I would see one if there was. No, there are not. The next one is Washington State, which is on March 12th. And then the one after that is on March 13th, and that's the Massachusetts meetup. And then we have Illinois on March 16th. And before the Illinois one, we have the Brazil one. And then on March 21st, we have Ohio, and then Louisiana on the 26th of March. And then we have mine on the last Friday of this month. So mark that one in your calendars, which will be on the 28th of this month, which is the UK Studio One meetup. And that one happens at 8 p.m. UK time. So if you're in the central time area, count back from 8 by 5. Or actually, it'll be by 6 at that point, because we will have gone over into summertime. So it'll be back to 6 hours. So count back from 6. It will be in the afternoon. I think it's like 2 o'clock in the afternoon central time. And I think it's 3 o'clock Eastern. But we tend to run for several hours, so don't worry about whether you are late or not. It's not a big drama. Changing Jams. That's a name I've not seen before. Welcome. Do the people accessing the workspace need to be Pro Plus members too? No. Only the creator of the workspace needs to be a member. Other people that you are collaborating with do not need to be. All they need to do is create for themselves a free my.presonus.com account. That's it. Doesn't cost you a cent or a dime or a penny or a peso. It's absolutely free to do that. So if you have other collaborators who are using other DAWs like Pro Tools or Cubase or Ableton Live or whatever they are using, or Reaper, whatever their DAW of choice is, their DAW of preference is, and they're not members of Studio One, or they don't even use Studio One, or they're not even members of Studio One Pro Plus, maybe they just prefer perpetual licenses, and they just use Studio One, but they just use the perpetual license. That's fine. It's okay. They've already got a My Presonus account. So it's dead easy. They can just join. Not a big deal. they can just join your workspace. But if they're using a different DAW, it's a little bit harder to do. It's not impossible, but it's a little bit harder to do. But they can still create the my.presonus.com free account, and then they can join your workspace. Now, here is the key point. If they're not using Studio One, it will make it a little bit less seamless in the integration, because there won't be an integration. Whereas with Studio One Pro 7 and Studio One 6, and actually Studio One 5 as well, there is a direct integration between the workspace and Studio One. So that already exists and has existed for nearly 5 years now. So, and that integration has got better and better. So if you're using version 5 and you're thinking, this integration thing ought to have improved, it has. It's improved a lot for version 6, and it's even better in version 7. So the integration between the workspace and Studio One is extremely good. However, if you're working with people that are using different DAWs, they're not going to have that integration. They're not going to be able to send and receive files directly from inside the DAW. That won't work, because that feature doesn't exist in any other DAW other than Studio One. So their only option is to download the files to their computer from the workspace and then import them into their sessions on their DAW of choice. So does work. Not as well as it does with Studio One, particularly versions 6 and 7. So bear all of that in mind. Kyle is here. Hello. He says, silly me, forgot to push my clock ahead. Yeah, dafty. I mean, especially when cell phones and smartwatches do it automatically. It's always 6 p.m. Central, Kyle. My show starts always at 6 p.m. Central, whether it's summertime or wintertime. Okay? Summertime or daylight savings time. It's the same. It's always 6 p.m. So, look at your computer clock, look at your cell phone clock. It'll tell you. And when it's 6 p.m., you know it's my show. I'm the only one that moves. You guys don't. Billy says, workspaces rock. They do indeed. It is incredibly powerful. Incredibly powerful. And here's the thing. We've been doing this now for 5 years. And in that whole time, I am absolutely staggered and amazed that no other DAW company has even considered copying the idea. Or, kind of borrowing it, appropriating it. I mean, DAWs copy each other all the time. It's just a fact. Things that show up in Studio One ultimately will show up somewhere else in another DAW, because they go, hey, that feature's really cool. Why don't we do something similar? And so they do. But here's the thing. Nobody, no other manufacturer has done workspaces. They've, I think Cubase have got something close to it, something that vaguely is a similar idea, but it's not, you don't have that integration with Cubase like you do with Studio One. So it's a bit of a unique thing, and it's very, very cool. Matt Cochran's here as well. He says, thank you, Jonny Lipsham. Thank you very much, Matt. I'm glad you're here. Welcome. And that brings us to the end of the show. It is now midnight in the UK, which will be 7 p.m. Central Time. And we are done and dusted for another Sunday Night Live. I will be back on Wednesday for Songwriting Simplified. So if you have questions on songwriting, lyric writing, melody writing, harmony writing, doing horn arrangements, doing string arrangements, doing arrangements for accordions, doing as whatever. And if you also have questions on music theory that you want to know about, things like harmony, chord changes, how those all work and how all those integrate together, then that is the place for you to ask those questions. And that is again at 6 p.m. Central. So for this week and next week, if you are in the UK or Europe, that's going to be 11 p.m. or midnight. Central Europe time, midnight. And it will be that way until the UK clocks and the Europe clocks go forward in the same way that the US has as well. So that's Wednesday night, 6 p.m. Central. Be there or be a dodecahedron. I'll see you then, folks. I have totally forgotten that I need to have the other song open. But there we go. All right, folks. Have a good one. There is an after show that Billy has posted there. So if you want to join and continue the conversation and continue the chat over there, Billy will let you in. Just make sure that it's only folks from this show who are subscribed to this show. Make sure only those people get in, because I know that we have had some weirdos try to get in. So, all right, folks, I will see you there on Wednesday, and I'll see you over in the after show. Good night, everybody.